Hey everybody, welcome to the videos from my core plays for week 14 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. This is where I go my 3 favorite cash and tournament plays on the entire slate. I also talk a little bit about prize picks as well. But if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, kind of fish member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. If you do enjoy the free content here over on YouTube, I'm sure like the extra stuff over on the site, projections, optimizers, ownership projections, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff, not just for the NFL, but the NBA and MLB and NASCAR once those seasons start back up again. So if you want to check it out, you know where to find it. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contest, or salary cap restrictions or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. Now, as of right now, if you do sign over on Prize Picks, you can get a free money bonus. It's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think it'll be it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And starting us off with cash game core play number 1, we have no other than Austin Ekeler this week at $8,300, RB1 for the Los Angeles Chargers, and he should be quite busy this weekend with the loss of Keenan Allen on the COVID list. We just got news that Mike Williams is good to go, but Austin Ekeler definitely sees quite the bump with Keenan Allen out, because when you vacate 10 plus targets that he gets every single week, and we know Austin Ekeler is heavily involved in the passing game on the season, he's averaging close to 6 targets per game and about a 15.5% target share. I would not be surprised if we see Ekeler pushing for around 10 targets in this game, which on a PPR site like DraftKings can add up in a hurry. So I'm really liking Austin Ekeler here quite a bit, and I do have him currently projected as the highest owned running back on the entire slate, as well as the highest projected running back on the slate. And despite him being super expensive, he actually grades as one of the better point per dollar options as well. If that tells you anything about the running back landscape this weekend, which is crazy because it was the complete opposite last weekend. But he has other several things working in his favor. He's a 10.5 point favorite, playing at home, high implied team total at 27.5 currently. The Giants are terrible versus running backs. They're currently 31st DA versus the run and 24th in fantasy points allowed per game to the position, allowing 6 catches, 48 receiving yards, and over 100 rushing yards per game. And if you guys are interested in the props this weekend over on Prize Picks, you can do it at 53.5 on the rushing and 40.5 on receiving, compared to DraftKings at 57.5 and 44.5 on receiving, which I feel like they typically have sharper lines. So I always like try to see what kind of value we can get on Prize Picks compared to DraftKings. I will say I'm never a fan of taking overs on Austin Ekeler's rushing attempts or rushing or anything rushing, but I do like his receiving props, especially that Keenan Allen, and you are getting a little bit of value there at 40.5 compared to DK. Moving on to our second cash game core play, we have Antonio Gibson, RB1 for the Washington football team at only $6,000. Now, this is not contingent on J.D. McKissic being out. It sounds like he's trending in the right direction. He practiced limited on Friday, still has to pass concussion protocol. I'm going to assume he's in, but even if he is in, I still like Gibson here because he's just too cheap, and we're probably going to get ourselves 20 plus touches, which he's pretty much gotten the past 4 weeks. He had 19 versus Carolina, but besides that, 24 carries and 2 targets versus Tampa. Week 12 versus Seattle, where J.D. McKissic played the majority of that game. 29 carries and 7 targets in last week with no McKissic. We saw 23 carries and 6 targets. And even then, Wendell Smallwood was still getting some passing down work. So I think Antonio Gibson is still just too cheap here. I currently have him projected for around 17, 18 points, which is one of the better point per dollar options on the entire slate, the position. And that is with J.D. McKissic projected in. So if you happen to be out, I mean, boost up Gibson even more. But I just like him in all formats here. We know he's a very talented running back. He's still going to have pass catching upside. Even if McKissic plays, it's just going to hurt it, obviously, quite a bit because that's his role in the offense. But I do like him a lot. I know this is a matchup versus Dallas that's not exactly inviting versus running backs. Currently 19th, but they're allowing the 3rd fewest points per game to running backs. But it's basically just a volume play at a price point that I feel is too low for a running back that is pretty talented and what should be a decently high-scoring game. I do like stacking this game up quite a bit. I think the passing attack for Dallas looks good. I think Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin look interesting for tournaments, even the tight end, Ricky Seals-Jones, and Taylor Heineke I think are somewhat interesting as well. So Gibson will be the one chalky guy, but do think he's a fine cash game play from a volume standpoint, although I wouldn't say I'm over the moon about playing Gibson. And for those of you on Prize Picks, he's sitting at 64.5 for his rushing, which the juice is on the over, and on DraftKings at 67.5. There's currently no receiving props. I'm assuming they're waiting on the news for J.D. McKissic, but when they do post those, and if the lines are low enough, I think it'd be somewhat interesting. And moving on to our third and final cash game core play of the week, we have Mike Williams, $6,000, the new wide receiver 1 for the Los Angeles Chargers this week. I know earlier in the year, Mike Williams was the dominant alpha dog in this offense, kind of shifted back towards Keenan Allen, getting peppered with targets. But with Keenan Allen out this week on the COVID list, Mike Williams steps into a role where it's going to be hard for him to bust at $6,000. I know he could be a little bit more boom or bust, but again, that's with Keenan on the opposite side of him. He's facing a very weak Giants defense. We already talked about this with Austin Ekeler, where these two should benefit the most. 27.5 implied team total. They are 10.5 point favorites. So maybe they have to take their foot off the gas at some point, but it's hard not to like Williams at this price point. He's shown he can produce with even Keenan Allen playing. Now, obviously, Keenan Allen playing does take some defensive pressure off of the rest of the offense, but I mean, the volume should be there. On the season, he's averaging over 7 targets per game. Keenan Allen had a 27% target share, 61% weight opportunity share, over 7 catches per game. So I mean, just once you vacate those, it's got to be a boost for someone. And Mike Williams would definitely benefit there. And so for the Giants this season, despite being 8th DA versus the pass, they are currently 24th versus wide receivers. And I also have Mike Williams as one of the best point per dollar options on the entire slate. And he just got confirmed that he is going to be active for this game. So as of right now, I would assume that he will be the highest on wide receiver on the entire slate as well. And for those of you over on the prop hunts, Price Picks 60.5 receiving, DraftKings at 66.5. He definitely does not feel as safe as Keenan, but he's definitely in a very good spot given the circumstances this weekend. And moving on to the GP part of this video, we have Javonte Williams at $5,900, RB 1/2 for the Denver Broncos. Melvin Gordon is expected to be back this weekend, which is obviously going to hurt Javonte Williams. If Gordon happened to be out, he is currently still questionable. If he happened to be out, Javonte is the best player running back on the slate. I don't think any questions are asked there versus Detroit. But with Melvin Gordon being back, that firmly pushed Javonte into the fringe cash/tournament category. He's still projected to pick up quite a bit of ownership, and I get it. It's a great matchup versus Detroit. He absolutely balled out versus Kansas City, and he's a very talented running back. I think he's one of the more talented running backs in football. It's just Melvin Gordon is absolutely killing his usage, and we know it's basically a 50-50 split when they're both playing. Since this is his first game back from injury, I mean, it's not like it was a major injury or anything for Melvin Gordon. I'm hoping maybe it's more of like a 60-40 split, 70-30 split. It probably won't be the case. I mean, they're dumb not to. I mean, Javonte should be getting all the touches he can handle. But I still like him in tournaments because the Broncos should have the ball pretty much the entire game. Detroit has nobody. They have 2 no-name running backs, no Hawkinson. Jared Goff's their quarterback. The wide receivers are absolutely awful. They're on the road in Denver. It's a tough place to play anyway. They have a low implied team total. The Broncos are big favorites. They could just run enough plays where Javonte Williams still gets a pretty good workload, maybe 15-plus touches. I mean, it might be pushing a little bit, but if he can get that, I like him a lot. We know Detroit is terrible versus the run. 23rd DVOA and 29th, meaning they're allowing the 4th most points per game to the running back position. So I think Javonte Williams, even with Melvin Gordon being back, is quite interesting in tournaments. There's no props yet. They're probably waiting on the confirmation of Melvin Gordon, but I still think he's a good play nonetheless. I do like him in tournaments. Fringe cash play, but definitely very solid in GPP. Moving on to our second GPP core play of the week, we have Leonard Fournette, Uncle Lenny at $7,400, RB1 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And his involvement in the passing game has made him very, very valuable in DFS over the past month or so now. He's just getting heavily targeted. We'll go all the way back to week 8. He's seen 5, 9, 6, 8, and 8 targets. That's 16 targets the past 2 weeks. And this is a high-flying offense. They throw the ball around 40 times per game. They're always in scoring opportunities, so touchdowns are always in the cards for Leonard Fournette. I realize this isn't the best matchup on the ground on paper for the Buccaneers, as the Bills are 6 DVOA and allowing the 6 fewest points per game. But they're down a couple guys in their defense, even the passing game. They're out Tre'Davious White. They're missing Star on the defensive line. Like, I don't really care about matchups anyway too much when the situation, talent, or whatever it may be. I think that always trumps it for the most part. And Fournette, he's one of those guys where if he's going to give me 15-plus carries, give or take, and 6-plus targets, that's just elite volume and a fantastic offense, and he's the goal line back as well. So I think Fournette, awesome tournament player. Everyone's playing the passing game. Everyone likes Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, you name it. Gronk as well. So Leonard Fournette, I'm not projecting him to go under-owned or anything. I think he's going to be one of the higher-owned running backs, but everyone's going to play Austin Ekeler up top. People are probably going to flock to some of the cheap mid-range running backs like Antonio Gibson, Javonte Williams, Saquon Barkley. So Fournette is kind of in that gray area, and Alvin Kamara too up top. So he's kind of in that gray area where people are going to have to think about playing Leonard Fournette. So I like being overweight on him in tournaments. And you can play him in addition to Tom Brady because he does pass the ball to him quite a bit. Now, the best correlation out there, I prefer the wide receivers and tight end with Rob Gronkowski, but you can still do it. But over on Prize Picks, he's currently sitting at 50.5 for rushing compared to his DraftKings being at 57.5. His receiving is also 4 yards lower at 32.5 compared to 36.5 for those of you interested over on the prop sites. And moving on to our third and final GPP core play of the week, it's the entire Dallas offense. I might be cheating a bit here, but looking at the ownership projections and how I have them projected in this matchup and game environment versus the football team, it seems like too good of a spot to pass up in tournaments because you can get some pretty good leverage here because none of these guys are really projecting to be super high owned. Like Prescott below 7K, facing the team that's allowing the most points per game to the quarterback position this year, around 24 points per game, is not going to be that chalky. Like he'll be owned a little bit, but nothing too spectacular here. Like Taysom Hill, Tom Brady, Josh Allen's going to soak up some ownership. There's a couple of other quarterbacks, so I like Prescott a lot, even Justin Herbert. Looking at the pass catching options, CeeDee Lamb, $7,200, Amari Cooper, $5,900, Dalton Schultz, $5,400. Like these aren't really expensive stacks here. Like yeah, CeeDee's above 7K, but Dak's not like insanely expensive. And if you want to go with the run game, which is going to be even more contrarian, Tony Pollard's looking like he's on the wrong side of doubtful. Bit of a torn foot situation going on there. If he happens to be out, you're looking at pretty much guaranteed 20 plus touches out of Zeke here. You'd imagine the Cowboys are going to be winning this game, so they could just run the ball quite a bit. But I'm liking all these Cowboys quite a bit. I mean, Washington's not a good defense. There has been some games where they have played well against good offensive opponents, but I mean, I'm liking the spot, liking these prices, and I'm liking the ownership projections. I'm seeing in tournaments to get some leverage on these Cowboys this weekend. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video, guys. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Optimizers, ownership projections, cheat sheets, all that fun stuff. You know where to find it. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, and as of right now, for you to sign over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPIN and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it. I'll stop rambling, and I wish you guys the best of luck on week 14 because it is a pretty confusing slate, so we might need it.